How about a more neutral video today? Seeing as how Nintendo admitted that this generation is going to have variable pricing, which will be a new experience for us here in the United States, I thought it would be a fun experience to go through some of the Switch 1's first-party titles and make a guess as to how much a sequel would cost on the Switch 2. I'm going to base my estimates on the amount of copies they sold last generation, the popularity of the franchise in general, and of course what the price was last year. Because technically, we've always had some level of variable pricing, since games have actually been released cheaper, as many of you have so kindly pointed it out to me. The difference is, in the past we had a ceiling and a floor as to where the prices could land. Now, unless Nintendo comes out and says $80 is going to be the maximum, we no longer have a ceiling. So when I say that variable prices are new to us, that's what I'm talking about. I apologize for not making that clear earlier. I call this a neutral video because I think it can go both ways. If you're of the boycott Nintendo Switch 2 camp, you might agree with the prices I'm listing, because a lot of them will be higher than they were last gen, and that just might reinforce your resolve to not buy the Nintendo Switch 2. If you're somebody that will buy the Switch 2, or is at least thinking about it, this could be a useful exercise to plan ahead and see how much you might be spending on video games. In my case, well, I just thought it would be a fun change of pace as to what I've been usually doing. Whining. So let's have a little bit of fun here. Many of you will be coming into this after seeing the Mario Kart World Direct anyway, and I don't want to rain on your parade. Not again, and not yet. Let's start it off a little slow. Snipper clips. This game had fairly humble beginnings, relatively low sales numbers, but I don't think it was expected to sell too much either. It was initially a $20 game, arguably about twice what it was worth, but there weren't that many games when it came out anyway. It eventually got a DLC which cost $10, and you can buy the bundle for $30. No discount. Until now. It's the same price. Now, I guess there are one of two ways to look at this. Obviously, there won't be a Snipper Clips sequel, at least I don't think so. But use your imagination and think about what if something like this was to be released on the Switch 2. I'm torn between $30 and $40 here. On one hand, Nintendo still has the base game for Snipper Clips at $20, so if you view it from that angle, add an extra $10, it's probably going to be $30. On the other hand, when they sell the entire experience to somebody, they sell it for $30. Add $10, it would be $40. And part of the reason I'm adding $10 to this anyway is because the game came out in 2017. My heart says this is $30, but I have a very big feeling these types of games are going to be $40. So we'll go with that. Especially if something like Welcome Tour is $10. Using that as a gauge, maybe. You know what, let's go 40, but it's a Switch 2 edition, so you get everything from the first game plus extra DLC, 20, 10, 10, $40, that's how they sell it to you. Bam. Okay, next one, ARMS. I believe ARMS sold about 3 million copies. I think Nintendo was kind of hoping it would be a little bit bigger than that, and it was actually a full-price game. But I don't know if it was worthy of being a full-price game for many people. Again, this is hypothetical. I don't think we'll get an ARMS sequel, but if we did, I think Nintendo plays it safe on this one. So they keep it at 60, they don't move it up to 70. I believe both of those games were launch titles, or at least close to it, so if you bought a Switch and those two games, you paid $80 for them. If they were to hypothetically be released with the Switch 2, it would have been $100. Let's move on to something a little bit juicier. Smash Bros. So I think they could easily get away with trying to sell this for more than $80. Especially if it's going to come out in probably the third year of the Switch's life, maybe the end of the second year. But I think they plan on starting it off at 80, and then just with all of the stuff they're going to add onto it, people are going to be buying in left and right, and they'll just keep it that way. Although I can see a scenario in which by the time this game comes out, prices are all going up anyway, so they just kind of are like, yeah, it's Smash Brothers, of course it's $90. Let's stick with 80 for this one, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm obviously skipping Mario Kart. To an extent, I barely consider an $80 game because if you're getting it digital, it's $50 with the bundle. It's only $80 if it's physical, which sucks, but I think a lot of people will end up going for $50 on it. But yeah, we can skip that one because we actually know the price for it. Okay, this is a good one. Let's do Splatoon. I think this game without a doubt is going to go up from that $60 price tag. It's just too popular of a franchise not to. Like if they were to release a Splatoon 4, you know it would be a big hitter. The question is, how big of a big hitter? On one hand, I can see an argument that it's not as big as Smash Brothers or Mario Kart, so why would it be $80? On the other hand, I can totally see Nintendo marketing the hell out of it and pushing it as if it's worthy of that extra bump. I don't think there's any form of discussion here in which it goes up to 90, but I think 80 is... yeah, let's go with 80. The justification will be the longevity of the game, how many hours of multiplayer you can get out of it, how they'll keep supporting it for a while, and that'll make it worth it, according to them. Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. Let's say $80. How about something like Captain Toad? It was a $40 budget game on the Switch. It was a port of a Wii U game. There's a hypothetical scenario where this gets a Switch 2 edition upgrade pack thing and it costs like $10 and it comes out for 50, but we'll ignore that. If there were a Captain Toad Treasure Tracker 3, how much would that cost? I can't see them going to 60 for this one. We'll stick with the $50 price tag. It definitely won't be 40 though. This one is kind of a wild card prediction, but let's say we got something like Star Fox or even F-Zero. I'd say those big IPs that are fairly well known are similar enough to Donkey Kong where they would be worth $70. You know, those fairly well known household names. But they also haven't had a game in a very long time, so Nintendo might have a hard time convincing people of an $80 price tag. So we'll keep it at 70. Let's do Pokemon. Like actual Pokemon, mainline stuff. So I obviously don't need to explain it to you, but Pokemon can make 5 different games on the console and all 5 of them will be in the top at least 15, 20. Actually, come to think about it. Sword and Shield, Scarlet Violet, Let's Go Pikachu, Brilliant Diamond, and Arceus. Those are 5 games and they're in the top 15. At least unless these numbers I'm looking at are outdated. So obviously the sales numbers back this one up. Now we're going to assume this is like a new mainline one. If it was a remake of an old generation, probably $70. But for something brand new from Pokemon to be the big hitter on a 4K console where there is no limit of what they can charge, and remember, this is Game Freak. They have their own shady practices. If this were to come out in a year or 2 from now, and everybody was okay with the $80 price tag from Mario Kart, and they clearly know they'd be able to get away with it, I can totally see a scenario where Pokemon ends up being the only game on the Nintendo Switch 2 worth $100. And I don't even think that's that much of a stretch. At minimum, it's $90. But Pokemon, it'll be $100, and some people will buy both versions of it. They'll probably do a combo pack for like $180 or something. I feel like the way the outside world looks at Nintendo fans as bootlickers that will buy anything that Nintendo puts out, no matter what the cost is, internally, that's how Nintendo fans look at Pokemon fans, I think. I was never big into the competitive scene. I pretty much bought every single Pokemon game from Red and Blue up until Sword and Shield might have been my last one. I don't know if I've played Scarlet and Violet. And I have a lot of friends that only buy a Nintendo console when Pokemon comes out, and they play the game, and they strictly play it one time, start to end, catch as many Pokemon as they can, and put the game down. And they don't know anything about any fandoms, they don't do anything online, no Pokemon Home, none of that. And I think there's a large offline Pokemon community that makes up a lot of these numbers. And unfortunately, I think at $100, a lot of them would still find it worth it, because it might be one of the few games they actually purchase. Hopefully I'm wrong though, both about the price of the game and about how many people will buy it at that price. How about Mario spin-offs? Let's talk about those. I think all of the sports titles will either be $60 or $70, and the price of them will largely depend on how well the first one does. If we repeat the same patterns that we saw on the Switch 1 and Mario Tennis is the first one to come out, I can totally see them pushing that to be $70. I think Mario Tennis is like the quintessential Mario sports title anyway. It's between that one and golf. And I believe that tennis was more popular this time around anyway. So in a vacuum, I would say either tennis or golf would be the $70 games. And then if they do another strikers or sluggers or name any sport that they haven't done yet and decide to throw it in there as well, those will all be $60. Tennis and golf didn't really sell that much to really be a $70 game, but I think Nintendo knows that whoever bought the previous ones will probably buy them again on the Switch too. So they'll go for that extra price. They'll sell golf and tennis as these long-lasting sporting Mario experiences that have existed since the dawn of time, and how you'll be able to sink endless hours into playing them online. And also, they'll give you a new character every month. For free, if you have an online subscription. Yeah, I'm good with that. Let's say $70 for tennis and golf, and then $60 for whatever other sport shows up. What else? Pikmin. Let's say Pikmin comes out, Pikmin 5. Pikmin 4 came out recently, and it actually sold pretty well too. And Pikmin 3 Deluxe did pretty decent as well. So on one hand, I would say that it might be a $60 game, but I can completely see Nintendo treating it like a $70 one. In the same vein that they would treat Donkey Kong, and if we were to get a Star Fox game or something. You know what I think will stay at $60? Yoshi and Kirby. And it's not because I think Nintendo undervalues the Yoshi and the Kirby titles, and the Kirby games especially. I think they love those. Obviously, Forgotten Land is getting that upgrade too, but we're ignoring that. We're thinking about a sequel to a 2D Kirby game. I think Nintendo keeps them at 60, but it's also kind of their way of showing goodwill. Like, see, these are 2 fairly big IPs for children, $60, haha. I don't know, that might be optimistic. But I just got a big feeling that's how they would price them. Primarily because there'll be 2D, but I don't think that's the only reason. Like, 2D Mario, for sure, that's a $70 game. Minimum. A big part of me wants to say 80, but I think they keep that one at 70. Super Mario Bros. Wonder 2. Either that or new Super Mario Bros. All-Stars, where they put all of those games together and throw them right back at us for 80 bucks. But yeah, if it's just a new standalone game, I think they go for 70. Did I do the RPGs yet? I think all of them will be $70. Xenoblade, Fire Emblem, those are all just $70 games flat. They know whoever bought them is going to buy them even if there's a $10 increase. And likewise with the Mario RPGs, if they do another Paper Mario, if they do another Mario Luigi game, 70 bucks seems like their realistic target. If they do something similar to Princess Peach's Showtime, maybe give us an official version of Waluigi's Taco Stand, those games might stick back down to 60. But something like a new Luigi's Mansion, that's back up to 70. If they were to do another 2D Metroid, I can see that one coming at 60 bucks because Nintendo is usually very careful when they bring out their Metroid games. But that being said, if Metroid Prime 4 ends up being like a crazy system seller and the best game on the Switch and Switch 2 and everybody just loses their mind about it, I think the 2D game could end up easily being a $70 game. WarioWare, I really want to give Nintendo the benefit of the doubt here and price it at 50 bucks. I don't know why. It's more likely to go up to 60, but I got this feeling. I don't know how to explain it, but if we end up getting a new WarioWare game on the Nintendo Switch 2, they'll keep it at 50 just to play it safe. And that's actually what they'll call the game. WarioWare, play it safe. And it's all going to be minigames where you're sliding your Joy-Con on your desk. And it is not going to sell very well. Alright, let's see. I'm quickly running out of first-party Switch games. 2D Donkey Kong and 2D Zelda, based off of how well they did on the Switch 1, even though they were either a port or a remake of an older game, I'd say they could move them for $70. Something like a Link's Awakening style Oracles game, for example, and a sequel to Donkey Kong Country Returns. Or, maybe a 2-pack where we finally get the Donkey Kong Country Returns 1 and 2 in a single package and Nintendo Switch 2 edition. They'll give it to us for 80 bucks probably. Actually, no, they definitely won't do that because that's $120 value on the Switch 1 games and they don't want to compete with themselves. So, yeah, if there's a sequel to that, it'll probably be 70 bucks. Also, apparently Nintendo Switch Sports sold very, very well. Like it's a top 20-ish game. I don't know why. I thought it was terrible. I loved Wii Sports. I wanted something similar to it, but I think that just lives in my nostalgia. I've tried bringing it out a few times with my friends and family, but nobody's enjoying it. I figured it's been like 20 years since the Wii came out, so it might be popular again, but nope. That was a quick one and done, never play again game for us. However, seeing how well it sold, 60 bucks. It could probably do 70, but let's go 60. Okay, I think I'm ready to wrap this up. There are 4 more titles I want to talk about. First, we'll say Animal Crossing and Mario Party. I feel like these should be $70 titles by every stretch of the imagination, but given their successes on the Nintendo Switch, I think they could easily be bumped up to $80 games. Animal Crossing is like the second best-selling game on the console, so that one's kind of obvious. But Mario Party has not only had 3 pretty successful games on the console, by the time it comes out, since Jamboree just came out, it'll probably be 2 or 3 years down the line. And by then, the ceiling will just have risen up more and more. So yeah, that'll be an $80 game too. And finally, 3D Zelda and 3D Mario. I don't think these hit the $100 value that Pokemon does, because I think Nintendo would actually be insane to price those at $100. And while they have kind of proven to me that they are a little bit insane, at least over the past few weeks, I gotta believe they won't go that far. Like Pokemon, yeah, Pokemon's $100 because they are insane. Game Freak is ridiculous enough to assume they can get away with anything, and it's because they always get away with it. So maybe they're not as insane as they're making it out to be. But Nintendo, oh man, can you imagine if they were to come out and be like, the next Legend of Zelda game and price it at $100? They wouldn't do it during the Zelda Direct. You would find out later through some kind of leak online. But still, that's not the point. So here's what I'm going to say. I think we get a 3D Mario before we get a 3D Zelda. As much as I want to say they would test the waters with a 3D Mario and throw it at 80 bucks and see what happens with Zelda, I think a 3D Mario and a 3D Zelda, those are the type of games that would move it up another level. I mean, Tears of the Kingdom took us up to 70 bucks, and if we got a later Switch Life Mario sequel, that probably would have been $70 as well. So given that Mario Kart is going to be $80 and Smash Brothers is probably maybe 80 bucks as well, whichever one comes first, Mario or Zelda, maybe they're announced in the same year again because that's what they did at the start of the Switch's life, they're both announced to come out at $90. Now, of course, I could be completely wrong on all of this, and $80 could be the maximum we're going to get for anything. And at this point, everything that we've heard up until now is so ridiculous that that would actually be good news. But in this hypothetical game that I'm playing with these guesses that I'm making based off of, my simple Nintendo knowledge, we could easily be looking at a scenario where we decide to buy the new 3D Zelda, the new 3D Mario, the new mainline Pokemon game, and Smash Brothers, and that would cost us $360, which would be roughly $120 more than they were on the previous generation. Actually, no, Tears of the Kingdom was an extra $10, so it would be an extra $110. I really hope I am so wrong on all of this, because otherwise, Nintendo is going to bankrupt us. Now, you know what the best part of all of this? If you were to buy those 4 games on the Switch 1, you'd have spent $250, which is only $50 than the price of the Switch itself. But if you buy these 4 games on the Switch 2, and they're as expensive as I'm making them out to be, so the gap would be even smaller, at $360, you would still be $90 away from the price of the Nintendo Switch 2. And again, that's with my inflated prices. If you assume that everything was going to cap off at $80, you would be $130 away from the price of the Nintendo Switch 2. I think no matter how you look at it, we're in for a very expensive console generation. If we're lucky, Nintendo will return that buy 2 for $100 deal, but it won't be buy 2 for $100. It'll be like buy 3 for $180, or something absurd along those lines. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how well these different games sell. I'm already fairly comfortable in my opinion that the Nintendo Switch 2 will probably sell half of what the first one sold. So I think Mario Kart could probably sell similar amounts that it sold last time, because I think most people will buy the bundle if they get the Switch 2. But all the other games, I mean, if their sales are proportional, they'll sell half of what they sold last time. We could very well likely see a scenario where the previous generation console, that being the Nintendo Switch, is still outselling its predecessor, both in software and in consoles sold. That is, of course, until Nintendo eventually decides to abruptly cut it off to make sure that everybody has to upgrade to the Switch 2, but we'll complain about that when we get to it. But what do you guys think? Because I think my most absurd predictions were probably the ones that were over $80, but the rest of them, I feel pretty comfortable about my guesses. If you think otherwise, let me know. Also, if I forgot any games, leave them in the comments down below too. Maybe I can guess in there if I catch it. Either way, this was a fun little exercise. Tomorrow, I'll be continuing my Galaxy 2 retrospective, and on Saturday, I'll be back for another talk. Thanks again for joining. I'll see you on the next one.